Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Hardesty. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a metadata analyst at Indiana University. I also serve as a product owner for our Hyrax implementation here at IU. So I'll be talking today about implementing Bulkrax on Hyrax for collection managers to use to bulk ingest multiple works at once. How we figured things out at IU and how we are sharing that information for our collection managers to use in their own work. I also want to acknowledge that Indiana University Bloomington sits on the ancestral homelands of the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people. These indigenous communities still exist today, but are mostly no longer located in Indiana, having been forcibly removed. I continue to seek ways to center indigenous voices and perspectives in the work we are doing here in the Samvera community and at IU, sharing these open source tools and community practices and considering how our digital collections management at IU can support indigenous communities through research, scholarship, and teaching. So I'm interested in discussing this work if anyone else in the Samvera community is also interested. So today I'll be talking about using Hyrax with Bulkrax. Bulkrax is a gem that supports bulk import and export of metadata and files for Samvera applications. And depending on when you started using Bulkrax, there are some differences in how things work to do imports and exports with different versions of Bulkrax. Haiku users, I think, have a different experience in how Bulkrax has been integrated into the web application and workflows that they are using. And this experience I'm sharing today is specifically about using Hyrax only and trying to add Bulkrax into that. But sharing documentation for collection managers so they can do imports on their own might still be relevant within Haiku. So hopefully there's some relevant crossover. We'll see. So we started up with Hyrax at IU using Hyrax 296 with Fedora 4 and Active Fedora as our connector between the application and storage. And this is our production system that we call Digital Collections, and it has a customized front end, as you can see. We also have customizations on the back end to allow our central authentication to be used for logging into the dashboard. And this is showing a screenshot that's showing Bulkrax integration with importers we've created. For a lot of it is for migration work that we're doing, as well as some new works from collection managers at this point. We also have export capabilities with Bulkrax that we are not using as much, but they have come in handy for some of the migration work that we've been going through in some cases. We started with an early version of Bulkrax. It was version 1.0 that also used an early version of flexible metadata called Allenson Flex after its creator and community collaborator extraordinaire, Julie Allenson. We were able to do CSV imports with one work per row in the CSV spreadsheet, and we could also import mets.xml files for more complex structures within a single work. With Allenson Flex, we were able to define different metadata contexts with different sets of properties for different types of works. And Sudha described this in her talk yesterday as well. So an image work versus a paged resource work could have different metadata properties, for instance, or different administrative sets could have different metadata properties. So ancient Egyptian image collection, for example, could have a set of metadata properties defined that are different from what we would define for our Birch by photograph collections for the former United States Senator from Indiana. So when we implemented all of this, Bulkrax was still in Samvera Labs on GitHub, and our use of it was absolutely totally behind the scenes. No collection managers were doing anything with this. We were using it for migration for the most part from our legacy systems into digital collections. Here's a screenshot of what we actually see as an interface with Allenson Flex for property definitions. And it's very different, I think, from what is available with flexible metadata at this point. And we knew how to use it ourselves as the admins behind the scenes, and we didn't really have to share the steps with anyone else at that point. And we thought for sure that we would update along with Bulkrax and Hyrax. IU did not, in fact, update beyond that initial Samvera Labs version of Bulkrax, and Bulkrax just proceeded to develop significantly, so that it is now on version 9, and it is no longer in Samvera Labs. It's an actual Samvera product in that GitHub repository. So we were looking at how to go about updating things, but we could not go from Bulkrax version 1 to Bulkrax version 9. That's not possible. So we did an update to Bulkrax 5 this year, still using our Hyrax version 296. So we're still way behind on our Hyrax, but more up to date on our Bulkrax. In doing this update, we lost the ability to do XML importing, but we are working on bringing that back since we actually need it for the migration work that we're doing. So that's important for us to get the migration complete. And part of the process of figuring out that we couldn't go directly to the latest version of Bulkrax involved digging into the documentation for Bulkrax that we hadn't actually looked at for a long time because we've been on version 1 for forever, and where we discovered there was an entire GitHub wiki of documentation that we had never encountered or used previously. So we want to update to Hyrax 5. That's part of what we're also working on. But in wanting to do that, we also were encountering that we couldn't use Bulkrax versions earlier than 5 for Bulkrax with Hyrax 5. So that was another reason that we needed to do the Bulkrax update first, get that Bulkrax version updated so that we can continue working on getting up to Hyrax 5. So now all of that put together, getting Hyrax 5 up and running with Bulkrax 5 is what we're going to be calling Galacto, and that's in the works. And then after we have that up and running, we'll be updating Bulkrax to the latest version of, it'll be at least 9, probably. So all of this will likely require that we still have XML importing capabilities back on track, back available to us, since we are still migrating, and the Mets XML content that we are migrating is probably going to be something we're going to be working on for a while. We did a lot of book digitizing over the years that made use of Mets XML for those structures. So now I want to share how we're using Bulkrax in our workflow with our collection managers. So each collection manager has a repository of unique works that's essentially managed by a single administrative set with a single metadata context. So it's the bucket for all unique works, and that bucket has metadata properties defined for that set of unique works. So we work with each collection manager to establish those metadata properties that they want to use for description for their set of works. So this is showing 3 different collection managers who have 3 different admin sets, and each of those admin sets has a slightly different metadata context defined for it. Collection managers in our system add multiple works to specific admin sets using CSV imports, and they also add those works to collections as part of those CSV imports. So showing here, on this screen, there's 2 different CSV import files going into the same single admin set. And then one import is placing works in one collection on import, and the other import is placing works in a different collection. So a single row in the CSV file is creating a new work, and the files that are listed there in that single spot in the CSV in that spreadsheet cell are added in that order that they're listed. And the work with those files is added to the specified collection. Our experience with Bulkrax has been over multiple versions, and upgrading Bulkrax meant that there were changes on import capabilities, and we had to learn about them. So Bulkrax, as of version 3 and later, saw additional capabilities enabled for CSV importing, so that, among other things, files could be listed separately with their own descriptive metadata, and that's what you see over there on the right side of the screen. Both CSV files that are showing here do basically the same thing. They're creating 2 works, each with 3 files, and placing those works into a collection. The first example on the left does require that the collection already exists in order for this import to be successful. Well, in the second example, the collection is created and works are added to that collection all in one import action. So even though it is nice to be able to list out files in separate rows to make sure you have every file included for a work, as it's showing on the right, we don't tend to have metadata needs at the file level for the use cases that we have right now, particularly for migration. It ends up being extra data entry to list each file separately. Additionally, our experience, at least up to Bulkrax 5, is showing that the second example on the right here does not add the files in the order that they're listed. It's not a guarantee that they'll go in that order. And that doesn't tend to work for our use cases, where we often have a single work that's a document or a set of documents with pages that need to be in a specific order. So the other difficulty that we've had with collection managers using this process is that the column headers have to be the property names from behind the scenes in order for the CSV import to work. So it's not the display labels for the fields that collection managers would see in the edit form, for example. So collection managers can't put together a CSV import without that additional information or guidance from us, basically. So documentation is really essential for collection managers to add to their own collections. Yeah. So IU's got this distributed system of collection managers handling their own ingests and edits for admin sets and collections. And what we've learned has to be shared with all of them in a way that's not overwhelming, but also provides options available that they might need to use, or details particular to our local workflow that they might need to keep in mind. And we do have some things that are particular to our situation at IU. So that includes details about the CSV file itself. We have an issue that's local to us because we're using Microsoft Teams, where if we try to share a spreadsheet template, a CSV template, it ends up being translated through Microsoft, and this byte order mark, a bomb character, will be added to the beginning of a file, and if it's not noticed, if it slips through, then the import ends up failing in digital collections, and the error message doesn't tell collection managers that that's what the problem is. So we've had to do some figuring out of ways to work with that, but we've also had to include that in our local documentation in case that happens to folks. We're trying to work around that and make sure it doesn't happen, but if it does, we need to provide information that that's a possibility of what they're experiencing. We also have to explain the situation with the exact column headers that are needed. So they need to know what the options are for the metadata properties that they have with their admin set. And we have to explain the import options. There's an option to do one row per work with the files listed in the order, or you can do one row for each part of an import with a file, a work, or collection, each having its own row. There are also capabilities for updating imports if they still exist and there are updates that need to be made, or using exports and then imports for making updates to multiple works already ingested. And that's referred to as round tripping. And there is some in Bulkrax GitHub wiki, there is some information available about that already. There we go. So we ended up writing our own documentation for our collection managers on how to construct and run a CSV import using Bulkrax. And some of that is locally relevant to our situation, but a lot of it is based on the information that is already on the Bulkrax GitHub wiki. So the Bulkrax GitHub wiki also has configuration details that are useful, I think, for both Hyrax and Haiku implementers. So one thing that I was wanting to see, and I was never able to figure out, is a way to bring in Bulkrax to a Docker container running DASI or Copy or Serenia locally to try out Bulkrax with Hyrax, just those two pieces together. And it's possible that there is a way to do it, and I wasn't figuring it out. But if it is a possible to do something like that within a Docker container running Hyrax, and having some instructions for that, I think that would be helpful to be able to work through this and experiment and talk and look at what our documentation needs really are for the community. And for end users trying to create and run an import, Haiku has a Confluence wiki documentation that provides instructions for content managers, which is what we would consider our collection managers, to import using Bulkrax. But it's set up in Haiku, so I think there might be some specific expectations there with work types and metadata properties that we might not be able to just point our collection managers over to that documentation to do that, to do CSV imports. The Bulkrax GitHub wiki also has a lot of details that are useful for end users trying to construct imports. So it's not just implementation and configuration of Bulkrax. There's a lot of end user useful information. And the Hyrax link that is on the slide there is actually over to the Bulkrax GitHub wiki, because we don't really have that connection right now between Bulkrax and Hyrax by default when using Hyrax. And depending on the Bulkrax version that you're using, there are differences in those import capabilities. So I'm hoping that our experiences at IU using Bulkrax with Hyrax and all the different things that we've gone through as we've been updating and upgrading and trying to get collection managers in using our system can help shape these documentation pathways in the Samvera community so that folks implementing Hyrax can understand how to get Bulkrax in place and configured for the way that they need end users to be able to use it. And that's yes, that is what I wanted to share today. So, are there questions or comments?